Thanks so much, Andrew. I'm so excited as well. This is going to be a really fun panel. We've got some great people to hear from, some good questions that we're going to be asking them. And we're going to go through the questions first before the Q&A session. So if you could just save those questions for the Q&A, and we will address those at that time. And you can put them in the chat. And then when we get to the Q&A session, you can raise your hand to ask those questions. But just a brief introduction for, first of all, the two moderators. I'm one of them, Laura Felco. I've been at Roberts since 2006. So I am a professor of marketing for almost 15 years now at Roberts. And I taught at another institution before Roberts. And before that, I was on the client side of marketing. So I did product management for the auto industry and the dairy industry, and I loved it. But when I was teaching as an adjunct, I said, you know what, I can combine teaching and marketing, and decided to get my doctorate and move forward with being a professor. So absolutely love my job. And many of you I have worked with in class. It's so good to see your faces again. Thanks for coming. I'm going to just kind of give you a brief overview of the MSMK program. If you've ever heard it, it stands for Masters in Strategic Marketing. It's a very unique program that we have at Roberts. And I'm not going to tell you too much about it. I'm actually going to have Nick just put his email and his phone number in the chat. He's really your contact person to give you the details. He's our enrollment management manager. And we have a group starting in May, a totally online program. We have a couple different formats, different timelines for students to do a master's in 18 months or less. So it's all marketing focused. It's a great program, very unique. It's focused on strategy and thinking more holistically and big picture. So you're really not going to find anything like it anywhere else. And just wanted to put in a little plug during my introduction for the MSMK program. And many of you who are alum can speak to that as well. But I also want to have Meg introduce herself to you. But first, Meg, did you hear about the unsuccessful marketer who couldn't cut it as a movie director either? Yeah,
No, I didn't.
He was rough. He had really, really weak calls to action. Right? Thank you. Thank you. I'll be here the whole hour. Meg, take it away. Tell us about you.
Oh, there is nothing better than a marketing joke and like a cheesy marketing joke. So good. I appreciate that. So I'm Meg Hartman. I am your other moderator. I do not have marketing jokes. That's all Laura. And I am assistant professor of marketing at Roberts. And this is my first year teaching full time. I've adjuncted for 5-ish years before this. Excuse my voice, it's like going a little bit, which is strange, but anyway, before this, I oversaw web and social at Roberts Wesleyan for 9 years. And then before that, I was at an agency at Butler Till. Many of you know it's a local agency. I worked there for a while, and SpectraCom. So have had some experience on both the client and agency, and now in academia. So lots of really fun experiences. And I'm going to kick it off and ask our panelists to introduce themselves. And one of the things you're gonna talk about who you are, where you work, what you do. And then the last little interesting bit of information we want to know is where you're most connected on social media. So I will share that about myself. I love Twitter. I'm definitely most connected on Twitter, and I can't wait to hear what you have to say. So we're going to start with, let's start with Sean.
Hey there. Thanks, Meg. Nice to meet you all, or see you all for the first time in probably a while. My name is Sean Pritzkow. I'm a marketing and branding consultant. I'm an alumni of Roberts, also Northeastern Seminary. And yeah, am I missing anything? Thumbs up. Did I miss anything?
Where am I connected
online?
Social?
Yeah, probably like Meg. I'm most often on Twitter these days. I look back and I only posted 2 photos on Instagram in 2020, and I think it's because I didn't go anywhere. So definitely more active on Twitter. So if you want to follow me there, but I'm on all the things.
Oh, great, thank you. All right, Ryan, you're next on my screen.
All right, thanks, Meg. Hey, everybody. My name is Ryan Guglielmo. I'm a public relations director at Dixon Schwabel. I've been with the agency for 9 years. I'm proud to say that I'm a graduate of this master's program. I completed the program in February, right before COVID hit. So it was a really amazing experience. I'll share a few pieces that I learned and how it prepared me for marketing during the pandemic, during our discussion. But professionally, I'm most often on LinkedIn. I also am on Twitter, like most, to keep tabs on what's happening and what's in the news. So I'm excited to be here and thank you all for the opportunity.
Great, thank you. And Julio, it's your turn.
Sure. So I'm Julio Saenz. I'm the Chief Communications and Development Officer for the Ibero-American Action League. I'm also a professor at RIT in the School of Communications and an alumni of the Roberts Program, 2013 graduate. Love the program. Can't say enough. I see Jay on, Jay Fuku is one of my, part of my cohort. Good to see Jay. And then as far as social media, I use Reddit a lot. I'm a big Reddit user. I read it constantly. I just like the way you can flow and customize, the way you can customize and the flow of the information that you get.
Hey, Michelle's here too.
That's right.
Don't forget about me. Awesome. All right, we're going to jump in with our first question for the panelists, and we'll just rotate kind of who goes first each question. But our first question is, how did you successfully alter your marketing strategies during this pandemic? And we're going to start with Ryan, and then we'll go to Sean, and then Julio.
Awesome. Thanks, Laura. Okay, so how did I successfully alter my marketing strategies during the pandemic? Before I get into this, I want to preface two important notes. From the agency perspective, agency life is volatile on a good day. And given the pandemic, agency life was really, really hard. It was a hard year for all communications professionals. I did lose some accounts at the beginning of the pandemic because doors shut and employees are being laid off and budgets are being cut. But at the same time, there were some partners that really needed communications and PR support. So while I lost some, I also earned a few new partners. And also I noted before in the introduction that I finished this master's program in February, literally days, weeks before COVID hit. And thankfully, I look back through this program, I learned strategy and I learned the importance of strategy. So had this pandemic hit and I didn't go through this program, I would have panicked and I would have just started doing tactics and there wouldn't have been a plan. So I look back and I'm grateful for this program because it really made me stop and still think strategy because I had just completed this program weeks prior. So that really set me up for success. I had to learn along the way, but I thought strategy the whole time. So I'm a PR professional, and as a publicist, I work with people all day. I'm around people literally all day. And with the pandemic, like all of you, at the agency, I couldn't be with my team or my clients. And as a publicist, I'm working with media. So prior, I was at networking events and I was at media events and press conferences and we were scheduling interviews. And the way that was done all changed. So a lot of us are on Twitter. I relied so heavily on Twitter to maintain these relationships and understand what the media was talking about. I still had a job to do and I still had to get my clients in the news. And the way I did that had to change drastically. So Twitter helped me tremendously. All PR opportunities in my world became virtual. So the media interviews, all hosted virtually. Media tours, all done virtually. Media training programs were all done. We had to revamp our whole program to make sure our partners were still comfortable and confident before any interview, and it was all done remotely. So a few examples from the past year. I had 3 partners during the pandemic appoint a new president or CEO to their organization, and they still had to announce this internally and externally, but the way we did it had to completely change. For internal comms, we did it through video instead of an in-person event. And for external communications, we did a virtual media tour instead of, an in-person press conference, something like that. So the whole point is thankfully we had a strategy in place, and the way we executed it had to completely change.
Thank you so much, Ryan. How about you, Sean?
Yeah, so Ryan, a lot of overlap with what you shared a little bit, because very much, so I work primarily as an independent consultant, and in early 2020, just everything kind of flipped on its head in terms of a lot of the projects we're halfway through. I do a lot of work in event marketing and things like that. Events were canceled or moved online in different capacities. So a lot of projects just may have just like flattened, and those things were not really relevant anymore. But likewise, previous clients came around that said, hey, we kind of need to rethink some things yesterday. So there's a lot of change, but yeah, in terms of what kind of things in terms of marketing change, like Ryan said, I think leaning into principles and not tactics. So a lot of the principles didn't necessarily change. In my work, I do a lot of marketing and branding strategies that usually comes out in workshops and exercises that I do with clients. And that, I think, became increasingly more important to really understand who your audience is and what you really can provide to them. And the more intimately you really know who your audience is, really helped in 2020. If you understand the social causes they care about, if you know even maybe their political affiliations, what to say and what not to say during some of these volatile or pressing conversations that we had this year, was really invaluable to know a lot of these things and have data about your audience. And I think one of the things that I really learned out of 2020 is the importance of building a community around what you do. Prior to 2020, there was a lot of touch points that we wanted to make with maybe our audience with a brand. And I really learned the importance of connecting your audience with one another and the kind of value that can bring to you as a business or as an organization, to not just have this one-way dialogue with your audience, but really get people connected and communicating together. I think a lot of these online formats and forums are really helpful, kind of like this, and connecting each other, opposed to just connecting people with a social media account, for example. In terms of like things that I did, kind of pivoted. One of the things that was a project that I worked on, I was talking about this with the moderators earlier before everyone jumped in, but I launched a project called Buy Cards from Home in November. It was specifically something that I cared about. A lot of friends that I have are involved in hospitality, food and beverage. Obviously a scene that was hit pretty hard this year, maybe an understatement in 2020. So one week I put together a site that really collected all of the links to gift cards that different small businesses, restaurants, bars, you name it, and collected those in a platform that allowed people to jump on. We were approaching Christmas, and a lot of people weren't having the same gatherings that they were having around with their families. So this tool became a way for people to identify ways that they can give gifts online that support the local businesses, while creating a little bit of local community and pride in the meantime. So that was sort of something that I did, even with some maybe my free time during the pandemic when work was a little light, to make an impact.
Great.
Oh, thanks for sharing that.
Thanks so much, Sean. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Julio, how about you?
Well, I think of a lot of, as we all know, everything really changed, and it was just about adapting as quickly as possible to the new reality. And I know for our organization, one of the first things we did is we started to shoot photography and for our website and for our promotional materials that reflected the reality of what was going on. And because it just seemed like you were really missing the mark, or I don't want to say tone deaf, I think that's too extreme, but it just seemed like you were out of touch if you weren't recognizing the things that were going on. And so for for photos for all our materials or websites. And actually, we had the photographer we used could go out and take pictures of staff wearing the actual masks and practicing social distancing and taking people's temperatures and all those kinds of things, so that we could tell the story right now of what we were doing. So that was one of the first things that we did. It seemed out of place. Like, I remember putting together some materials, and it just, like, how can we have these pictures of these folks like it's like nothing's going on? And so that was one of the first things that we were able to do. And then so that's one piece, is the marketing. The second piece is the events. A lot of that translated decently to online. It was sort of like, I'm sure we were all kind of going through that, like, is this gonna work? How many things can we use Zoom for? And luckily a lot of it did work. And the third thing that I think changed is, you had to, the way you dealt with customers, because we also do fundraising and also run our radio station. And yeah, we had some people that dropped out right away. They're like, no way, we're cutting everything for right now. And then it was sort of this moment of like you jump in the water and then you sort of bob up, and then you realize, like, okay, well, actually some of these businesses are still going and there's other opportunities. And so some things that I thought we weren't even going to be able to pull off, like we have our annual gala in the summer in June, and I remember we're going to do this virtually, and hey, if we raise $5,000, awesome. Let's dare we dream. We're going to shoot $5,000. We ended up getting around $47,000 from people. So you never know. Like, you can't, you always have to swing. You have to swing at the pitches, because you never know. I mean, so I think during this time, I think I've learned that no matter how dire some things look, you have to run it out. You have to, I keep using baseball analogies because we're almost there, but you gotta run it out, run to first base, because you never know. Some of these things worked out much better than we would have anticipated.
Thank you. And that is actually a perfect transition to my next question, which is, what marketing tactics did you try or you saw another company use that surprised you? And Julio, I'll let you start, because you said you were surprised about the success you had. What else did you see that surprised you, good or bad?
Sure. So I would say, like, a couple of things. I think using social media as a primary source of reaching people was better than I thought. I think a lot of people were at home spending time on their phone or their computer, so that held up pretty well. And then I think we've all been through a few lulls with, like, having events on Zoom. Like, we hit a little bit. There were a few times I think we hit Zoom fatigue, and then we kind of came back up, and now we've kind of gotten used to it. And so I'm happy about that. Like, that event that we had, that fundraiser, worked great, but we also had a bunch of other events with the radio station. We had like a few stay at home parties to get people to stop going out, spreading the virus, and those surprisingly worked well. Like, I think there's still lots of people, and I think especially us as professionals who spend a lot of time on Zoom, we may get Zoom fatigue sometimes, but the public, sometimes it's their first time seeing, like, other faces. And I remember seeing that reaction on some of those stay-at-home parties that we had that actually the city sponsored, because they wanted us to try to get people to stay at home on Friday. So we'd have these virtual house parties, and a lot of those folks, like, you could just see, like, they were saying hi to other people. Like, they don't have Zoom accounts, they don't know how to use those things. So that was surprising to me, that all people's reactions to it, they absolutely loved it. And like I said, we get used to it because it's nothing for us. We have those accounts, we can do those things. But for a lot of people, it was like a really special and important way to connect.
Thank you. That's really interesting to hear. Sean, I'll have you go next.
Yeah, so related, I think in 2020, I saw the good, bad, and the ugly of virtual summits and online conferences, and the ways that different people adapted to the 2020 climate. And I think I was really interested. It was really interesting to see the different ways that these were implemented, because it was sort of like either cancel it or you do it some online in some fashion. And some of the things that I thought were really interesting is the way that the ones I saw poorly done, I kind of shared about this in my previous response, but didn't connect people with one another, specifically online conferences. I participated in one. I think they moved a 1-week event to a 4-week online event, and witnessing that was almost comical. Like, I don't think I sat in any of the online presentations, but they opened a Slack channel and everyone communicated over Slack for a month. And it was people that were in different industries, and people were having conversations on there. And it was like I'm sure the organizers spent a whole lot of time on the content for this, getting speakers and all the things, but like all the action was in this Slack channel. So I think it's really interesting to see that. If you follow like tech news and acquisitions and things, this year, Business Insider acquired like a popular email newsletter called Morning Brew. And there's a couple examples of that, and seeing the ways that people are really valuing community and content and newsletters that are going out, and not kind of connected, like not just this one-way thing, but this community dialogue, this online facilitation of these things, and is really becoming, I think we're going to see it, in the years to come, the importance of online community and how to facilitate that.
Great, thank you. Yeah, sort of, a great build on Julio talking about connection has really been, it sounds like connection has really been key, and finding ways to connect people where they're involved and interested, like the house parties that Julio had talked about, or conferences on Slack, finding ways to get those people together. Ryan, last but not least.
Yeah, I have, there's 4 tactics that really surprised me the most. The first is very in line with Julio, the virtual galas that not-for-profit organizations were hosting. A lot of organizations, they netted more because they didn't have all the expenses. And I saw so many brands get really creative with their sponsorships. We sponsored one, and we had dinner delivered here. We had the floral arrangement here, the centerpieces, the drinks. It was all part of your sponsorship, and it was all delivered to your home. And how smart people were making it so easy for us. I think people are a bit fatigued with virtual events, but I also don't think they're going away. It's a new service offering that the agency launched because they saw that opportunity, and they ran with it, and they're seeing some great success. Secondly is, I thought PR was so big and so important this past year, and it gave me a new appreciation for thought leadership. We see, doctors like Dr. Fauci speaking on a national scale, and we all turn to him and we trust him in time. And on a local level, Dr. Mendoza has done a fantastic job. And before the pandemic, I didn't know who Dr. Mendoza was. I'm embarrassed to say that, but now you don't live in Rochester and you haven't heard of Dr. Mendoza. He is a true thought leader. And between media opportunities and speaking engagements, he's everywhere. So it gave me a new appreciation for thought leadership and the importance of that. Third is creative branding. Now that we all have to wear masks, the brands that put their logo on a mask, yes, of course you should do that. It's so funny. A couple weeks ago, where my family's sitting at the table for dinner, and it's about 6 o'clock, and we have a knock on the door, and we go out, and it's 2 people selling roofs with their branded masks. And of course it's so old school, but of course they're going door to door because everybody's home. I just thought that's smart. You're meeting me where we're at. And finally, and this is more general, but honestly, it surprised me that business still happened. And Julio said it before, people adapted so quickly. And if you have your plans, and if, to Sean's point, if you know your audiences, you still connect with them, but the way you did it looked different. So that's why you needed a strategy, or then you would just be completely lost and kind of all over the place. So it did surprise me that business did happen. Leadership changes still happened. Acquisitions still happened. The way we promoted it was just different. So I also think a lot of good came from the past year as well. And we can learn from what surprised us the most, good or bad.
Thanks, Ryan. This is so good, you guys. I'm really excited about the next question. It's probably one that we're all really interested in hearing your insights on. And actually, Sean, I'm going to start with you on this one. The question is, as things start to open up, and it kind of feels like it's happening slowly, but there's definitely a light at the end of the tunnel here, that we want to know what your thoughts are on predictions for how to allocate marketing resources moving forward after this pandemic. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so it's a great question, right? I think I'm really interested in see the ways that hybrid events happen, because I don't think there's a right way to do hybrid events, specifically for people, right, that are immunocompromised and might not feel comfortable going out in public to an event with hundreds of people. I'm a musician, so I'm missing like going to my first concert, and I'm kind of torn between that experience, right? And I think a lot of people are going to be torn. So I think hybrid events are going to be the reality, but I'm really interested in see how people execute those. I specifically go to a church that's doing a really interesting version of this right now. We were at church on Sunday, and we're in the room with 15 people, I think, at the moment, or 20 people, but online participants are on the screen, and we're listening to them talking, giving prayers and liturgy and things like that. And so I'm interested to see what ways on a larger scale people are going to do hybrid events where the online folks don't feel like they're in a back room and not part of it, but that they're a part of this experience. I think there's going to be significant changes to that. I'm a big fan of the phrase, like, when others zig, you zag. And I think with the widespread adoption of digital platforms and the way that we're really doing things in 2020, I'm curious to see how people really embrace more traditional advertising, like billboards and newspapers and print newsletters and things like that in 2021 and beyond. And then if you've been following, one of the things that I saw recently that was really interesting is I think 2020 was the first year that Amazon, Google, and Facebook, the amount of ad spend was the most on those three platforms opposed to any traditional advertising. But there's some recent changes now with data and cookies and tracking, all these things where privacy is kind of at the forefront of the conversation now, and the way that we track people's user activity is changing. So I'm curious to see if some of these traditional advertising platforms really make a comeback in light of a lot of the changes with Facebook and Google and how they track people. So I don't know, a lot of things I think to look out, and I'm excited to see what happens.
Thanks, Sean. It's so good. Engagement is so different now. It's engaging and communicating and connecting people is so different during this time. So it's going to be really interesting to see. And in case you didn't know, that's why the marketer broke up with her boyfriend, is because of a lack of engagement. You're welcome. Yeah. Yeah, that was a good one, isn't it? So Ryan, I'm going to turn it over to you. What are your predictions for after this pandemic?
I really wish I had some really funny marketing jokes. I'm going to look some up and share these at our next team meeting. They're going to think, who are you? But a few predictions. I'm excited to learn alongside all of you. I think coming out of this pandemic, my vaccine appointment is scheduled for Thursday. I think consumers are going to support the businesses and the organizations that were present and that connected with them throughout the pandemic. I think some brands may be forgotten because they didn't market themselves whatsoever. They didn't go to the people and the groups that matter most to them. So I think as a consumer, we're going to remember those who were present, who were marketing themselves, who made themselves current. And I think if we take away one thing from this past year is marketing and communications is so important. And in the hardest year, like the year of the pandemic, those that marketed themselves and promoted themselves and responded with some type of action, those are the ones that stand up. So I think those are the brands and the organizations that people are going to continue supporting. And if we take anything away, it's marketing communications is so critically important.
Thanks, Ryan. So true. Such good insights. Julio, what are your predictions moving forward?
Sure. So I definitely want to echo what Ryan said. I think some brands have done a fantastic job just by being there for people. I remember I used to live in Miami, and I was there for one of the hurricanes, and this guy named Brian Norcross, he was the weatherman who like stayed at the station through the whole hurricane, and like he just became the weatherman, the brand forever after that, because people just he endeared himself to everybody by having been there for people during those moments. And I think some brands, have done that now, and have done that successfully because they didn't stop marketing. They that's one of the things I tried to do with our radio station, to give people, the information they needed. We started like a newscast every single day. We did all this stuff to try to follow the model of this Brian Norcross weatherman in Miami. And so I think that's key. And I think there's still time to do that as we come out of this. I think all organizations need to do that. You just can't lay in silence. Life is going on, and people are looking for resources, for those lights of, hope that as we move out of this. So that's one thing. And then from a very operational kind of thing, we're also looking at, as Sean had mentioned it, how we come out of this in some kind of hybrid way. We're not going to, the lights aren't just going to flip back on and everything's back to normal. It's going to take a little while, and it may take more than a few months. I mean, I think we're lucky in Rochester. I think we have a great, county government, and they've done a really good job vaccinating people. But our gala this summer, well, that's going to still be virtual. Our large luncheon in the fall, we might be okay by then, but it's not going to be 700 people. It may be 100 people. So how do you scale these events, still make them profitable? How do you, and still reach people and play the role that you need to play? So, but that's what we're counting on, is just this we're kind of walking it back. When this first started, I remember, once again, a sports reference. I remember reading or seeing an interview with someone who was talking about, well, how will we come back, to normal? And they were saying, well, it'll just, all the steps we took to get here, we're going to take in reverse. So at first, we're not going to go back to having 80,000 people in a stadium. We're going to go back to what we're starting to see, a few people, and then from there it'll grow, and hopefully within some time we're back to normal. But the reason I say all that is for planning purposes, for how we, allocate our resources and what we can plan on actually happening. I think that's the way we have to look at it.
Thank you. This was great. So now it's time for questions. So you can either ask your question in the chat, and I'll be checking to ask the panelists, or if you'd like, you can also raise your hand under reactions. You can choose. Oh, I don't see the raise hand emoji there. Well, you can raise your actual hand, and I will call on you to unmute, and you can ask your question. Oh, Sean says he sees the raise hand emoji. I don't know why I don't. So some of you may have it, some of you may not. Feel free to raise your real hand or your emoji hand.
You can press the clapping emoji, and that looks like a hand.
That's true. Yeah, that works too. Okay, so Michelle has a question. Curious if you have seen mail making a comeback in terms of marketing because of the digital overload. And panelists, feel free, one of you can jump in to answer that. I'll leave this open.
Yeah, I certainly have. I've seen it done well and done poorly. I thought it was, I mean, specifically, my wife and I both subscribe to print publications this year. And I think it is such a huge opportunity when you know people are going to be at home. I remember before this, I would like rip through the mail and just like chuck things that I didn't know what it was, and then just open like important bills and things. And I've been definitely more attentive to what is coming in the mailbox recently.
Any other panelists have anything to add? If not, that's fine.
I'll add, I know you asked about direct mail, but I'm seeing so much success with email marketing, and our email strategist has never been busier before at the agency. I think email is more affordable. So I think when you're considering a direct mail piece, really sit down and consider if it's worth the expense, or if you can go in a more affordable direction with a tactic such as email. But I'm like Sean, I mean, this is me on a personal level. I do look forward to getting the mail because I'm home all day. So it is something special, but I think for brands, if marketing budgets are sensitive, then always consider the email approach as well. Email is hot right now.
Thank you, Ryan. All right, next question. Moving forward, it seems like many events will be hybrid, and marketing will take a hybrid approach as well, where some aspects stay digital. What aspects of marketing or events do you think are most likely to come back when large in-person gatherings are possible? And what aspects do you think will be gone forever to be replaced by digital? Great question. Julio, I don't know if you want to kick that off since you have been talking a lot about your event work.
Yeah, so I think there's going to be a great opportunity with events. I think once things do clear up, I think we're all going to be dying to get out there. And so I think event marketing out of home is going to be, a big opportunity because people will be dying to do everything. So and I think there may be a fatigue that's been referred to a few times where people will want to disconnect and just do things outdoors. So I think, out of home event marketing will be huge. I was thinking like what's not going to come back. I think, well, funny enough, events as well, but maybe like the traveling one, the kind that we travel to. I think we've all heard about, business travel may never come back. And as part of that, those kind of big conferences where, you used to be able to, or trade shows. I'm not sure what's going to happen with trade shows. I've worked with some of my own clients that do B2B, and like, I don't know what's going to happen with those kind of things. It's just, who's going to want to go to that or even pony up the money for it, to send 10 staff people, and they might say send one. So I think the local events and social events will do well, but I don't see how, some of these national and regional conferences will be able to come back.
Julio made a few sports references. I think one organization in Rochester that really stood out this past year was the Red Wings. And even though the games were shut down, the way they still offered different programs, they had a dinner on the diamond that my family signed up for, and it was so much fun over the summer. We only went once. I tried to get in a few other times, but this was a new program. So all of us can't wait. I can't wait to get back to the stadium and watch a baseball game. So I think we're going to go back to these events, but I hope that brands that offer these new types of dinner on the diamond type events for additional revenue for their organization, I hope they can, and I predict that they will continue those in addition to what has always been done. The programs that were very successful and maybe not in person continue to offer those because it was a win for the organization and during the tough time. So I think brands will take what worked for them, even hybrid, and continue to implement that moving forward in addition to their traditional business model. Go Red Wings.
I even enjoyed their tweets. You know, they had a great one where they were like, this is the only season we've been undefeated. And
Yes.
that was funny and clever. Yeah.
They're a brand that I thought rose above, and between the programs, the content on social media, the way they still had us engaged and supporting the team, I thought they did a fantastic job with their marketing. I don't know who does it, but whoever does it, kudos to them.
Yeah. All right, another question. There's so much free content out right now. What are some ways to differentiate a webinar offering to increase attendance? And is anyone paying to attend webinars anymore?
I can start with this one. Our agency, Dixon Schwabel, launched a webinar series about a month into the pandemic. And it's emceed by John Elhart, one of our managing partners. And so he launches this webinar series, and we've learned from some of the greatest webinars that he's hosted. And then there's been some that have not been as great as others. I think what stands out with the webinars is the panelists and how you promote these webinars. So many brands and organizations have started their own webinar series, but when you have an awesome panelist and a great discussion and a great topic, what I've seen from the agency side is when you get those panelists to promote this event to their own networks, that has really helped additional attendees to each webinar. So I would say, and I've attended several webinars in the past year, and I'm sure you all have too, when you're planning your own webinar, get a stellar panelist and make sure they promote it to their own personal and professional networks. And that's a huge way that you can get additional attendees.
So we've done a couple, just to add on, and funny enough, so there's two examples I can give you. One is, my friend Herb Escher, who runs Dale Carnegie. I know they've done really well during this whole time, but I think that's partly because they have such a strong brand. So I think if you have a brand that you can leverage like that, awesome. You know, they're known for doing that, and you can leverage it and people come. For our organization, we actually offer diversity training to organizations and cultural competency assessments and things like that. And so during this time, to try to get business, we've done a bunch of diversity workshops. And kind of what Ryan was saying, it's been surprisingly hit or miss. We had one that was on recruitment, and it was a home run. We were like, yeah, we got this. And then we had a second one where we actually brought in like this nationally known speaker, the founder of the Young Lords, which was like the Latin version of the Black Panthers in the 70s. And we thought, hey, it's going to be a hit. Everybody's going to see this guy. And it was like half the attendance, a third of the attendance. So it's really hit or miss. I think because of what the question actually alluded to, which is there's so much choice. So we thought we were, after that first one, we're like, all right, we're rolling. We're gonna spend money and bring in the speaker, and we got like a third of the audience to just having some local HR people talking got us. So it's really hit or miss, because I think the many, like you said, there's a lot of options. So you have to be really creative and unique to get, and useful, to people, for them to carve out the time.
Yeah, I think semi-related, not necessarily with webinars, but I think in general with this past year, the internet doesn't seem to have an appetite for like mediocre content anymore. I think in general, just like really honing in on what is quality content in terms of blog posts, social content, anything really online. I think because there's just so much volume of content online, like the question said, you really have to kind of put some work into. And I think I really give a lot of credit to amazing copywriters and writers and on-screen talent for video. I think the value of those roles are just going up and up now as the demand for really compelling information and content is here now.
Thank you, everyone. We have time for one more question. I think I got them all from the chat. I know we're chatting back and forth in here, but if anyone wants to ask another question.
can I just share something really quick and related to this that I do all the events for the college, and our strategy was really built on like where people were and like traveling and visiting people and like getting people together in regional areas and focusing on content that was regional. And we realized the elimination of like where people could join us from totally flipped our strategy in terms of what we focused on for our events. And so we had to completely rethink our strategy on how we reach people in terms of what was interesting or what would gather people. And so for us, we had to look at what do we uniquely provide that no one else does, because there's tons of content and information everywhere, right? You can find a million webinars today on the future of marketing, but like what uniquely do we offer that you can't get somewhere else? And that's the perspective from Roberts, right? The local expertise and the perspective that includes the faith perspective for some of us. And so we really had to pivot I hate that word, but change and alter our strategy to really focus on the content as opposed to the where people are. And so for us, and that actually brought out a whole new group of people across the country who got involved and engaged in ways they haven't before. So it kind of opened our eyes to what we were missing when we were just seeing things as an in-person strategy. And so, yeah, I would just say that like for us, it kind of totally flipped our way that we do things and the way we see how we approach our alumni. So anyways, I just wanted to share that.
That was helpful. Thanks, Michelle. And we do have one final question, and this is a really great question. This is great for those of us with access to the internet, but what resources are there for those without equity? So I'd love to hear if anyone has any suggestions or experience with that.
Sure. I'll jump in just because we did some of that at Ibero, and I was also part of the I worked with Causewave on the 6 Feet Saves Lives campaign and the planning for that. And so first of all, brilliant question, Jay. And funny enough, I think when we look back at this, we'll see that a lot of those folks couldn't afford to have their food to use Instacart and have their food delivered from the market, or stop working. And so especially during those first few months, I mean, the 6 Feet Saves Lives campaign, all that stuff just went to the people, and it was very much on the street, in person, out of home kind of marketing. We did for 6 Feet Saves Lives, we actually did these stencils that would go on the floors in the corner stores and in the convenience stores in those neighborhoods, and so that you could see the 6 Feet Saves Lives campaign, and people started to become conscious of keeping their distance. We also did like a graffiti campaign with a local what do you call that, tagging crew? I forget the right word, but a local crew that did that stuff, and so they were actually paid to do that and everything. So you had to definitely go. And so out of home fun, like I say, it's kind of sad in the fact that a lot of those folks had to leave their home when some of us were able to stay home, but at the same time that created the opportunity, that touch point to do those things, like on the street, in the convenience stores, in those places that folks are still frequenting.
So good. Thank you, Julio. Good question, Jay. I love that you're questioning everything still. Makes me happy. Just a couple highlights. You guys, this has been so much fun. I want to wrap it up today just by kind of a couple themes I jotted down while you guys were talking. Lots of innovation and creativity, right? Pouring into it, and in some cases increasing our budget during this crazy time. So we're staying relevant and we're staying present. We're not just disappearing and getting lost in the clutter. So I wrote down engagement, connection, staying present, being relevant, and then trying to jump from tactic to tactic to tactic can be so exhausting, right? So the other theme I'm hearing is just take a breath and focus on strategy and strategic thinking and holistic marketing so that we have a plan in place that we trust. We trust the plan, and we're not just going to throw stuff at the wall to see what sticks, but we're going to have that framework in place. And that's going to give us confidence going into a time of crisis, unpredictability, and even a pandemic, so that we're as prepared as we can be. And it's so great to hear that our alumni have been as prepared as they can be going into this pandemic and onward. So I want to thank our power panelists. You guys were amazing. Thank you for giving us this hour of your time. All of you were awesome. Thank you, Andrew, and the Rochester Young Professionals for this opportunity to partner with you guys. It's been great to have this collaboration. And Michelle and Nick, you guys did an awesome job with all the logistics and making this happen. It's an important conversation. So excited to be a part of it. And thank you, Meg. I'll speak for both of us that we were honored to be able to moderate this event today. The only other piece of advice that I have to leave you with is that I would like you to be like Yoda. And when I say I'd like you to be like Yoda, of course, you know how Yoda got his first new lead, right? He used the Salesforce. Yes. Right? Oh, come on. That one didn't get as many laughs. All right. I tried. I'm done. If you want more jokes, Google it. I stole all of these. These are not original. But it was a ton of fun to see all your familiar faces. It's been way too long since we've connected in person, but I'm so thankful that out of all of this came the opportunity to do these events and to be able to connect. In some cases, people I haven't seen in years, I'm seeing now for the first time at this event. And it's really awesome to have that opportunity. And you know what? I'm going to say God can turn anything around for good. And there's a lot of good things that have come out of this, and for marketers as well. Lots of great opportunities and innovation. So keep doing what you're doing. I'd love to connect. Maybe we'll do another one of these in the future. But thank you, Michelle and Nick. I'm going to let you guys go outside in the sunshine, enjoy it. And thank you all for being here and participating today. It's been lovely to see you all. Thanks for coming.